right. Hey, it's Rio here for your week 2 classwork. So this week we continue helping you orient yourself into this class with a typical week. So this represents your typical week in this class. And because of that, I'm going to go over the new things that you have not been introduced to in a more detail, and then give you a little more heads up about some items that you need to make sure you've done. So let's go ahead and flip over to the course and take a look. Alright, so we're into week 2 classwork. So you're going to have a hands-on assignment for this week. So I always recommend doing it in the order I've listed it. So in this case, doing this before you look at the My Screens. Part of the reason is I want to give you the heads up on the My Screens. It is from a previous semester. I don't go over the process of how to, because I'm going to have you learn, if you don't already know, how to do a print screen. I want you to have your main system, an alternative system, and then a mobile system, and I show you how to take print screens on all those and then upload them into your drive. Now, having said that, let's go ahead and do this. It's time now, not later, to go ahead and bring up that classwork, okay? And this is your heading 2, right? Your heading 1, which is your week 2, right? And so what I want here, video 1, actually let's do this. We'll be consistent for last time, part 1, okay? So let's do this, and I like this to be a heading 2, right? So in here now, I'm going to do some bullet points, right? So the first one is the heads up on these screens, right? That it's from a previous semester, and but the work that you need to do is still all the same. I just don't go over the part where you actually have to load or have to upload, because I've already gone over that, but I am actually going to talk about that a little more. So anyway, now I'm bringing this up so that you now are taking notes on this week. So this is a typical week. Maybe that's really the note we should have started with, that this is a typical week in our class, is that you have items due on a Thursday night and a Monday night. So in this case, it's a classwork hands-on, and then on a Monday night it's a chapter quiz and a MyITLab. Just today I recorded videos for the chapter quizzes. So when you come into any chapter quiz now, what you're going to see is that there's some instruction and then there's a video. And this is one I just recorded recently, so definitely the first time you do a quiz, I'm going to say this, let's see if you got it. I definitely recommend you watch that. And the reason is that the way you have to answer specific question types, and in this case I'm going to say matching ones, you want to make sure you understand my format. So in your notes, put note that you need to watch the quizzes video, okay? In here, because you're going to have to take that, right? And it's not that long, and it's helpful to help you walk through that. So coming back over here, right, so then you have the MyITLab. So this is the week, right, for getting your required materials. And I gave you the heads up on week 0 about this, so now is the time for you to do it. So what I'd like to do here is I'm going to go over the MyITLab, how you get set up with the MyITLab. So we'll do that. And then just coming here, before we start, there's one more thing I want to cover, a couple things I want to cover in here. One is that I've given you the link to my Google Calendar, and I talked about this in the week 1, right? Now by the time you get in here, you're going to see my office hours. Matter of fact, did I load these yet? Maybe I haven't, but by the time you get in here, you're going to see my office hours when I'm on campus, when I'm in class. And the thing I would say to you is, if for some reason my office hours don't work for you, contact me and I will work to the best of my ability to meet with you, because that's my job and I really enjoy, and you benefit hopefully from just a few minutes sitting down and talking to me about some issues or some challenges that you may have. Okay, so now before we get into the MyITLab, just the process of setting it up and my strategies to help you get through it, I do want to talk about that I do offer in this class late work. Okay, so and here's what this looks like, right? So if I'm going to come back to a typical week, right? Again, in our class, items that are due. Let's just say, because in week 3 we start something new, right? But that's good because in this case we start working on the Code Academy things. But any item you can complete late, okay? So let me show you what this looks like. So I have a sheet here. And so what you do here is an example of an item late, right? So if you submit it on time, that's awesome. You get the most points possible. I'm just giving an example here of like an item in week 3. That's the HTML structure. But this could be, right? This could be a Word, let's say Word chapter, because you're going to start this week, 1 exam, right? You submitted that late. So normally this item is worth 100 points. So if you do, it's worth 100. If you get all the points, then you get 100 points. Okay? If you get 85, that's what it is. Now, if you submit it late, which means you submit it after the due date, right? You get 25 points off that item. Okay? So if you got, let's say you got 100, right? So if you got 100, you get 25 points off or 25% off the item, and therefore it comes down to 75, which is better than 0, right? Definitely better than 0. I do like to give students that opportunity, but I want you to know that's true, that if you submit things late, which you can do, you do get points off. Okay? Now, I do give you the ability to get these points back. Now, you should be taking notes right now, okay? Because this is important. So yes, you can submit work late. There is a downside, which is points off. The upside is that you can do things to get those points back, okay? So I'm going to come over to another sheet, worksheet inside of this to show you an example of how you do get these points back. So there are going to be various items in this class that you can do to get points back, and in this case there's a training, because I don't require the trainings to be complete. I require the exams to be complete. But in this case I allow you to submit the training as a way to get late points returned, right? So in this case, let's say you had turned in something late, Word chapter 2. So again, this is the example here I was using. Really anything could be turned in late. There's a discount, but this is giving you an example of what you would do if you turned in something late and you wanted to get the late points returned to you. So you tell me the item and by the way, this is a sheet that you'll end up setting up and sharing with me. So you'd put it in the shared with Rio, and this is a new kind of thing that maybe you haven't done, and it's called a Google Sheet. So it's the idea of Excel, but on Google, and it's columns and rows, but you'll learn about that later. But it's basically, the first one is the item you submitted late, the proof of how you're going to get the points returned, and then my comment when I go in there and look at it. Okay? So this is what you would set up and share with me in order for you to use some of your trainings or some of the other things that I will talk about in this class to get those points returned to you. So I call this late points returned, but it's really how I handle late work in this class. Okay, so most of the time students will use trainings from MyITLab. So I just wanted you to know about that. I will give you a link as the semester begins of a link to an example of how this file needs to be laid out. But as of this point, I haven't made that available yet, but you will see that. Okay, so that's one of the key topics I wanted to talk about there. And now what I want to talk about is actually what the other thing that we have this week, which is your chapter quiz, or sorry, your Word chapter 1. Okay, in order for you to do this, you have to have your MyITLab accounts. And I've been talking about this for a little while. So by the way, if you're taking notes now, we've switched topics. Now we're talking about the MyITLab, the setting up your account. Okay, and so this is where you would come down here. You'd find the section that you're in. You would look at whichever link, right, based on the section, online, face-to-face. And then you would get, if you click on a link to the actual steps that you need to take to go through to set up the account. Okay, so I'm just gonna, and by the way, really important that you choose the correct item or the correct what's called the course ID that you're enrolling into. So let me just show you how you do this. So I already have it up. Oh, actually, what I need to go to is MyITLab. And by the way, it's good to save that link because you may need it later on. It's just good, like you could save it up in your bookmarks, wherever. Okay, and so by the way, if I haven't said this, and I think I have, but if I haven't, my recommended browser is Chrome, especially for MyITLab. Okay, so here's what you do. You would register as a student. And again, the documentation shows you that. You need an email. It doesn't have to be your campus email, but I think that's an easy one to use. Your course ID, right? So this is the ID in here, okay? And then if you have bought it online, you have an access code. If you bought it through the bookstore, you got a card that has an access code. If you're buying it online, you are going to pay with it for a credit card now. Okay, so this is buying MyITLab online. You have to buy it here with a credit card. And I talked about in the syllabus already the price difference. Like you can get it either at the bookstore or you can get it online. I don't tell students how, I just give them options. So knowing that you need those three things, I would go ahead and register. And I believe the first thing it's going to ask me is that course ID. Okay. And I would not have the comma in there, and I would hit continue. And here's where you're going to need to have an account. If you've taken this class, I think in the past you can use this login, otherwise you're going to have to create a new one. Now I happen to have a student account, so I'm going to go ahead and use it here, right? But again, you'll probably be creating an account. Now here's the reason I'm showing you this, is that once you get in, there is an option that you have here, right? So good. Oh, it's already done. Bummer. So what I was actually trying to show you was the screen before this where it gave you the options for getting into the course, but that's okay. What I want you to do is when you get to that step that just skipped over for you, I want you to read that information very carefully, the different ways, like if your access code that you enter that, and also on the bottom of the page it does give you a trial period, I think of 14 days, so they do give you a little bit of a help to get that done as well. So sorry that I didn't demonstrate this quickly, but you still get the idea that on the page that you will see here, you're going to get some options about, again, if you have the access code from the bookstore, you would enter that. If you were buying it online, you would hit credit card if you were doing that, or look on the bottom, and I think it's on there that you see a trial period. Okay, so whichever way you do it, you can do it there. I do have already over here logged in. Not logged in, I'm actually going to log in again, but the reason I'm going to do this is I want you to show you the one thing that really will make your experience in MyITLab better, is to make sure, and it'll tell you this when you first come in. By the way, I switched to Firefox only for purposes of demonstration. I do recommend, as I said before, Chrome. So what you could do here is you could go into preference and you could allow. So you always want to allow pop-ups from this website. So in your notes, that's one of the big things that making sure you do in the beginning will just make this easier. Otherwise, you're going to click on things in MyITLab and wonder what the heck happened. Okay, so don't let that happen to you. So I'm going to go ahead and say allow, and then it allows that. And so now as I get further in, it will. So now once I've registered, I'll probably have to, and look at that, see, it's continue without updating. I thought I had updated it, but maybe it took it a moment to register. So now I'm going to log in with my student account, okay? And again, this is where you've set up your password and your account all on your own, just making sure you go into the right course. And then I'm going to go ahead and log in to here. I don't save passwords, okay? All right, so you should only see one listing here. So now you're in the MyITLab. Okay, so here you are, and I talk about, I have another video showing you about the ebook, but it is right here. So if you wanted to go right to the textbook, you could go here. But most of the reason you're here is for, in course materials, completing the work that you have due with MyITLab, right? So as a reminder, just to understand where we're at, we're talking about the first item that you have due in this course, but really just going through how to set it up. But this is, we have Word, Excel, and Access, right? And like, remember I was talking about before, there's items that you complete to get late points returned. Well, I don't officially assign Windows 10, but I recommend if you want, go in there and complete the exam. Okay, and if you do that, you can use that as one of your items to get late points back, right? So that's one way you could do that. But in general, let me just go in. So we will start on Word, and what will be listed here is on these on this link, you will have your trainings and your exams for all 4 chapters. So we have 4 chapters of Word, 4 chapters of Excel, and 4 chapters of Access, the database. Okay, so you can see that I have gone in here and I've spent part of my summer just going through this. And actually I've been doing some testing on the Mac side. So for you students that have Macs, I'll give you some clues, and even students that have Windows, because sometimes keyboards shortcuts or keyboards are kind of hard because they can all be unique. Okay, but in general, now in your notes, really so important. I can't emphasize enough what I'm about to tell you as far as making your experience in this program so much better. Is there will be a temptation on some folks' part, totally normal, to want to just go in and do the exam. And why would that be? Is because you only get points for the exam. Right? You don't get it's not a graded item, the trainings. Remember I was talking about you could use them for late points returned, but I do not grade these as a standard. So you get graded by completing this. Okay? So there's a bit temptation to just go to the exam, which, you know, if you want to do that, that's awesome too. And I do give you 3 attempts. You can attempt this exam 3 times. But I would tell you in general, to make your life easier, just do the trainings. And so let me just show you. I'm going to actually go into one of the trainings, and I may get that pop-up blocker. That'd be good. Oh, no, I didn't. So I must have set it up right. It's popping up. So you can see that this actually, if you recognize what's going on, it did pop up in a new window. So this is the training itself. So for all you'll have so many items a week to do. Okay. Now this, again, keep this in mind. I'm on my Mac, and this is a simulation. Right? So it's looking like Windows, and it feels like Windows, but it's a simulation of Windows. All right, so let me give you the little tour here. So here's the step that you're completing, how many points it is. Here's the instruction for what you need to do. You can make this text bigger or smaller. Sometimes your resolution may get in the way a little bit, so just keep that in mind. You have 17 items to complete, so it shows you where you're at with that. I've given you 7 attempts at each question. Right, now this is a training, and you might think that's a lot, but sometimes depending again on your operating system and your keyboard and all that, there may appear things that don't work. But I can tell you that it actually does most of the time work, and the few things that I've found I've been reporting. So when you find stuff, right, it is important, because sometimes it may not, but most of the time it should. So let's come over here, view all. You can actually go through and see, in this case, there's 17 items in the training, which, by the way, there will be 17 items in the exam, because it's generally a 1-to-1 correlation for when you're trained on something, and then you'll get the exam. So when we go into the exam in a little while, the thing you will not see is right here. So in your notes, right, if hopefully you've been taking notes along as I've been talking, and I know it's pretty fast and it's a lot of information, but it's not that bad. You got this, okay? So is this part right here. So you really have, you can read the instructions, right? You can watch, or you can practice. Now, as I've been doing this myself, I've really noticed that I am better if I watch, right? So if I watch somebody do it, so when you click on watch, it'll actually take you into a video that's generally not very long, and it'll tell you how to complete the item that is in front of you. Now, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to walk you through, but I definitely recommend that. So in this case, this is fairly simple, but sometimes there may be multiple steps, right? So sometimes to complete one item in MyIT, you may end up having to complete like 4 or 5 steps. So what's cool about these learning aids is they will chunk it by each major step. So like right now, here's the first thing you need to do. And then you won't be able to do this step until you complete this first one, right? So as an example, let me just show you. It says open Word. Now, what I would do is just go in here and type that because I know how to do it. But if you go through the training, they show you another way to do it. And this is also why I recommend doing the training, because you want to learn the way they want you to do it. And I know it may seem, and we call this very opinionated, because they have a very clear opinion on how they want you to do it. So in your notes, I should see that MyITLab is very opinionated. Okay, so now I haven't completed this step yet. I'm going to open a blank document, and now you can see that I've completed that step, and now I'm on to the next one. So in this case, I can see there's 3 steps total I'm going to have to do. Okay, so I just want you to see how that goes, and not until you complete all 3 of these in this example will you get through and go to the next one. But so learning aids really important. Now the practice is nice too, because it'll actually, like, let me show you practice. So practice in this case, again, I could have watched the video, right? But in this case I decided, nah, maybe I'll just do this. I kind of know how to do it. And actually sometimes I'll use a combination of both, right? So I'll kind of start with, by the way, practice complete. But once I do the practice, now I have to do it myself. But what I was saying is that sometimes I will start, no, actually most of the time I find that even though it feels like it takes longer, if I watch the video and then I do the step, it just sticks with me, because later you're going to need it to do the exam. Okay, so again, you get to figure out how you want to make your way through, but my suggestion is to do a watch, and then if you get hung up, do a practice or watch again. Okay. All right. So the thing I'll say here, and you've heard me say the idea of the students on the Mac may have a few more challenges. This has really made a big difference, because there's oftentimes, and even in Word I noticed this was true, but especially in Excel, they wanted you to do like a control home. Right, so that's a keyboard combination, and oftentimes folks don't have those key combinations or can't find them on their keyboards. So then you can hit go. Now in this case that didn't register because it wasn't asking me, but when you're trying to do something that you can't find on your keyboard, and man does that need to go in your notes, use this on-screen keyboard. It will make your life so much better. So over here is the bandwidth status, and this is really an indication of how good your bandwidth is out to the internet, because the slower your bandwidth, the slower this experience may be will be for you. So it's good to have good internet. And the thing is with MyITLab is that it's a pretty heavy program, so I'd recommend shutting everything else off. Shut off anything that's not absolutely necessary for you to have on your computer, and make sure you've been checking for viruses and malware and stuff like that. We will talk about that as the course goes on, but those things can also interfere with your keyboard. Between you and the program can really interfere. I had that actually happen. I was running something and it did that. So anyway, quite a bit there. I'm going to go ahead and save, which I want you to know. In this case, you can save and come back to it later, and it will give you the progress that you've started it, right? As a matter of fact, this was the one training that I thought I could do the exam without it. I did run into some issues with the back that I reported, but it was like, oh yeah, I see the benefit of doing the training. I keep saying it, but I really saw the benefit. Okay, so now I want to kind of conclude this video by showing you the exam, because really the whole reason you're doing the training is to get to the exam, because this is the one that gives you the points. This is where you get the actual points. So you can see in this case it's pretty much identical. It won't always be identical, but sometimes they'll give you variation. We call it scenarios, right? But in this case and here, now you have 7 attempts at each question, but again, no learning aids. You can save for later, you can reset, you can use a keyboard, so it looks very different, but it's not. This is and you see it up here, the exam. Okay, and this is where you get the points. Everything I said about the other one, except for the learning aids, is still true here. You can come in, if you happen to come in later and you've done the first 5, you can go ahead and go right to the one you want to pick up on, which I think actually it will take you there, but you can see that for yourself. Okay, all right, so you got to complete this. When you get to the last one, then you'll get a score. I'm going to go ahead and hit save and get out of here. Okay, so that should give you a lot of what you need. So here's the other thing is when you run into issues, which I hope you don't, because this is, I think this software has been a bit more tested than previous semesters, but if you do, right, there is support on their side that you'll need to take advantage of, right? So let's end with our notes on this first part. And I'll just go to MyITLab and you'll say students, get registered, and then there's a support here, right? So this is where, and we're using Office 2016, right? And it talks about how to set it up and how to contact Pearson. So if you're, because here's the thing about this, and let me actually go over to Chrome and go back to here to show you, and I know this is a lot of information, but good stuff, is that when you're dealing with something like a simulated environment, which MyITLab is, it's really important that if you're having some things really not seem like they work or not working at all, that you contact them because every computer is somewhat unique because of the software you've installed. Right, so in your notes, put that every computer is somewhat unique. So for me to understand your environment would be kind of hard. And really part of what you've paid for is their support. So make sure you reach out and get that support when you need it. All right, so this was part 1. We'll end this, and I promise part 2 will be shorter.